welcome to this month's Global Outlook video. My name is Pat Thaker, Editorial Director for Middle East and Africa at the Economist Intelligence Unit. I'm joined today by Keren Uziyel, who is the Senior Economist, CRS Manager for the Middle East and Africa Division at the EIU. Today we are going to talk about the most topical subject going at the moment, Israel and Hamas war. We're going to look at closely on what's the next phase and what is after the next phase. Welcome, Keren.
Hello, Pat.
Almost 6 weeks into intensive war and fighting and 3 weeks of ground offensive, it's clear that Israel has very quickly taken control of the area north of Gaza, particularly in terms of eliminating a substantial amount of the military hardware of Hamas. So this effectively ends phase one of the war and Israel's key objectives of going in, particularly on the ground. So what can we expect the next phase to be?
That's right. Israel's taken a very careful approach to its offensive, and it's had some success in destroying Hamas capabilities and key commanders. But it has a lot more to do if it's going to meet its objective of destroying Hamas capabilities. And there's still an open question as to whether it can fully destroy Hamas, and destroy its tunnel network, which has been key to Hamas being able to attack Israel. And also not forgetting 240 hostages are still being held by Hamas in Gaza. And obviously the hostage situation complicates and slows their offensive. So they will be taking a very gradual approach. They've basically managed to take hold of northern Gaza, Gaza City, and Israel will look to gradually ensure that Hamas capabilities are destroyed throughout the Gaza Strip.
That leaves the most hardest question of all. What are the prospects for post-Hamas Gaza, both politically and economically, that would be acceptable both for the US and particularly the Arab world?
So Israel has said that they'll be responsible for security in Gaza in the long term, but we don't envisage that Israel will want or seek to occupy Gaza permanently. So what we're looking at is some kind of Arab-led initiative within the Gaza Strip. The destruction of Hamas, or even 80% destruction of Hamas, leaves the question of what will come next. We have the Palestinian Authority, very much a rival to Hamas, governing in the West Bank, but they are unpopular and lack credibility even within the Palestinian population, which poses problems for their survival in Gaza, despite the fact that they're seen as the main prospect both within the Arab world and by the West as legitimate, as taking responsibility legitimately in Gaza. So it'll be very complex, and we are also looking at an area that has been completely destroyed, and there will be further destruction, even if Israel takes into consideration humanitarian concerns. So Gaza will need massive investment from, principally we expect the Gulf economies, the likes of Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Qatar will have to play a role, principally economically, but they will also look to guide whatever political settlement comes next.
That takes me to the next very important question, is when you also mentioned that the situation in Gaza is already very dire, which already was even before the war, and there's going to be major reconstruction and rebuilding taking place. Who do you think is going to foot the bill there?
It very much looks like the Palestinians have no capability to do that. In the past, we've had Qatar very much involved in reconstruction of Gaza post other conflicts, and Turkey to a lesser extent. I think both from the West and from the rest of the Arab world, because of Qatar's connections to Hamas, that we will look at a wider Gulf involvement. There will also be some involvement from the West, including the US and the EU. but the principal driving forces in terms of how much and how it's spent, I expect will come from within the region.
When you say within the region, are you talking about particularly the Gulf states or a combination?
So that's right. So we expect Qatar to still be involved, but I think Saudi Arabia and particularly the UAE will play a big role. Gaza ultimately is a small economy, and these Gulf economies now, with oil prices being so high, have the resources for this major reconstruction, and that also allows them to have more political input going forward.
Leaves me with Egypt, the big player in the region, from both sides, and particularly in terms of the balancing act, particularly in this crisis. Where will Egypt's position be, both during the war and after the war? So
Egypt, like the other Arab states that do have diplomatic relations with Israel, has been critical of Israel, but rather muted. They don't want to jeopardize long-term relations and security cooperation, but they also have to take into consideration Arab public opinion, which is obviously very strongly in favor of the Palestinian position. And it's a delicate balancing act. Egypt does not have the economic resources to contribute to Gaza's reconstruction, but it will play a very central diplomatic role in diplomacy and in the humanitarian effort to support reconstruction and during the conflict. So Egypt will play a critical role during the next few months, and also as an interlocutor between Israel and Hamas, potentially on issues such as hostage release.
Thank you very much, Karen. I think very much it's a topic that's going to run for quite some time. Thank you all for watching. Thank you very much. And do keep an eye on our viewpoint on the current themes, particularly where Israel and Hamas war is regularly covered. Goodbye.